Hello, welcome to 2024. A new year, a new beginning. I think we might start this year with a new build. So here we go. This should be pretty straightforward. Paper Panzer. Hang on, this has got a lot of problems with this kit. Let's see if we can do something about that. Well, let's start with diving into my stash for some goodies. Full model King Tiger tracks, Voyager copper wire cable set. That's an E-60 Paper Panzer build, the perfect candidate for a warm-up to start the year. Let's begin by having a look at what exactly is a Paper Panzer. The E-series Panzers were a late war attempt by Germany to produce a standardised series of medium, heavy and super heavy designs. These designs were simpler, cheaper and more efficient to produce than their predecessors. Although this standardised approach only offered modest improvements in armour and firepower, they did aim at showcasing the biggest and best of the nation's weapon systems. The famous Mouse, although not an E-series tank itself, it was the earliest ancestor of the only E-series tank to have begun prototype production, the E-100. The E-100 was to be the Mouse's replacement and would have weighed a massive 123 tonnes. As the majority of the E-series only ever existed in blueprint form, they are commonly known as Paper Panzers. This kit is a Fist of War E-60, a heavy replacement for the famous King Tiger. As such, it shares a lot of similarity with its big dad. Anyway, let's start building. The first piece to consider is the barrel. This kit is all plastic, so there's no metal barrel, no photo etch, no goodies at all. In closely scrutinising the supplied barrel, it's obvious that there are no placement pins. It's smoothed down both joining edges, so I'll be ordering a metal barrel replacement. Moving to the turret and its gun breech. We see poor weld seam moulding. I'll have to replace those. No interlocking plates again. I'm going to come back to that later. The magnet looks good, but no texture, so we can fix that with some stippled cement. Like the gun barrel, the breech is two smooth pieces and they don't join accurately. I'm not too worried about this, as it will be hidden inside the turret and we need to use it to join the metal barrel to it, so yeah, we'll proceed. So gluing is the next step. Fitting these pieces to the front plate and mantlet shows that whilst the parts fit, the engineering here is certainly not Tamiya quality. I'm going to need to use CA glue to fix all of these, or the weight of the barrel will see it droop so low that, look, not even a little blue pill's going to help. With the front plate in place, the fitment's acceptable, so no rolled steel texture, and that means we can flex our skills at reproducing that. The hull is made of three pieces. The lower and upper sections join at these unique fenders, and this exposes what is a well-known major flaw of this kit. There's no support inside the fenders at all. Nothing at all for the lower half to glue onto, so I'm going to need to build up this void using styrene sheet. After supergluing in 2 layers of styrene, I fit the lower hull once again. Success! This has actually greatly stiffened the hull, as well as fixing the fitment issue which I described earlier. Looking at the glacis plate, there's a glaring issue. Well, 2 issues really. No interlocking armour plates, which was the fashion at the time, or connection points for the towing eye, so we'll come back to that a bit later. There's also no steel texture. More improvements are required. To address the panel gaps here, I turn to my trusted method of using Tamiya putty and extra thin cement. After smearing on a thin layer of white putty, I use the extra thin cement to make a paste that can easily be washed into the crevices and smoothed over that surface. This has the added benefit of chemically binding the putty to the plastic. Comment down below if you'd like me to produce a tutorial on gap fixing using this method. I'd be more than happy to share that information. Back to the turret. I removed the less than impressive weld seams that replicated the joining of the top and the side plates. I also cut out the front seam and glued a strip of styrene inside. I'll build up a more accurate weld seam using Tamiya epoxy putty. So I'll stipple Mr. Cement Deluxe using a stiff nylon brush and then sand the high points off using 400 grit paper. This will leave an imperfect surface and be an excellent base to build on. Subtlety is the key here if you want to make realistic rolled steel texture. This is just one of a couple of ways to produce rolled steel textures. Using Tamiya putty mixed with model cement is also a popular and viable option, and I do use that method if I'm looking for a more artistic representation. In this instance, I'm looking for something that's closer to a realistic interpretation, so I'm using this method instead. The next step once the cement is dry is to give it a very light sanding, almost buffing the surface with a fine sanding sponge. You only need to remove the high spots. Don't dig too deep, or you're just going to end up removing all the work you've just completed. For a change of pace, let's assemble those through model metal tracks I had in my stash. Look, I'm going to admit it, I'm a track snob. Metal tracks add that touch of heaviness to a tank model. They sag as only heavy tracks can, and when you polish them with a sanding stick, that's instant, real polished tracks. When it comes to weathering, metal tracks have the option of being chemically burnished. That's the best primer that can be used, and it takes all types of weathering products without damaging the tracks themselves. Due to an unexpected user error, i.e. I forgot to press record, I do not have the video of me building the turret weld seams. However, it's a technique I borrowed from Martin Kovacs. Here I'm adding weld seams to the side of the loader's periscope cover to give it that heavy metal feel. You'll also notice the subtle rolled steel armour texturing on the turret sides. This mimics what I did on the lower hull and front plates. I've also added some missing details to both the hatches by using photo etch and some copper wire grab handles. The rear plate was a poor fit. It needed lots of filling and adjustment, which seriously tested my patience. The final shots, you'll notice I added a no-tech light, some jerry can holders and towing eyes. I just can't help myself, I need to modify things. Likewise to the front plate, I made towing eyes from spare parts in the kit, then added weld seams. Now the photo etch. I dove into my stash for King Tiger photo etch parts to pimp this kit. Uncle Night Shift says this is easy. Alright, let's see. .3D printed parts it is then. So here's a trick for doing complicated and hollow tool holders like these gun cleaning rod holders. I firstly stick them down using a drop of extra thin cement. That holds them in place long enough to then use CA glue in the centre to bind them permanently. This means no CA cleanup. I then spray a drop of CA activator on a brush and then a drop or two to instantly set the CA glue. The wheels in the kit are King Tiger steel rimmed versions. The method used by the manufacturer to fix them to the suspension is really a poor choice. The wheels are glued to little nubs. It's a small surface contact point and really is poor engineering. Well, that's the construction phase done. Well, nearly done. As you can see, I haven't stuck all the wheels on and the tracks aren't fitted, but they're things which I'll do separately and add later on after the painting and weathering is complete. This kit proved to be a bit of a challenge, and I found myself spending a lot of time fixing what really are simple engineering problems that just shouldn't exist on a modern kit. I didn't go into this blind. I knew that this kit had some serious flaws in it. That was something I was prepared to take on. That said, this is a very interesting subject matter, and I always enjoy taking some time to add extra details to any kit. And that awesome metal barrel I mentioned earlier, well, that arrived in time to complete this build, as you can see, so thank you B&A Model World, you've come through again. Next we'll move on to the paint scheme for this awesome What If Panzer. I have some awesome ideas on a rather unique version of a late war camo scheme that was taken from some King Tigers in the last weeks of the war. That promises to be a little controversial choice, I'm sure, so make sure you catch me again in 2 weeks for that little surprise. Until then, keep building your kits, don't just fill up your stash, and do your best and get out and support your local hobby shop. Those local hobby shops are usually family-owned businesses and they need our support so that they can continue to support us. Thank you and see you again in the next one.